And so we talked a little bit about Apple, but there's also Google. And I know that you've got some thoughts around this like duopoly and how Apple and Google may actually be disincentivizing or putting obstacles up in terms of Bitcoin adoption, devices. Like, how do you think about that duopoly? What do you think the challenges are and how do we kind of get around them?
Yeah, I actually think that this is going to be the biggest challenge to mass adoption of Bitcoin and to decentralized internet over the next few years, because we're getting really close to the point where I think this tech is going to go mainstream. And we're seeing all these really, really cool applications. Whether you're a Bitcoin maximalist or not, I mean, I think a really great example that I like to use is, Brian Armstrong at Coinbase did a tweet storm a few months back about how Apple forced them to remove the dApp store from the Coinbase app. That's really bad, right? And, a Bitcoiner might say, haha, it's a dApp store, who cares, whatever. But I think if a company is trying to, in this case, Apple, which is kind of acting as the gatekeeper, is trying to get involved and restrict what kind of applications you can run on your device, our entire industry is about building these new business models, right? Streaming payments, smart contracts, machine to machine payments, being able to automatically get rewarded with Bitcoin in a game, being able to automatically, maybe if you read an article or listen to a podcast, maybe you can kind of stream Bitcoin back to that content creator. There's all these like crazy cool business models that I think are unlocked by this whole new industry. And the existing duopoly, Apple and Google, do not allow those business models to exist on their devices. Apple is obviously a bit more strict than Google. But Google too. I mean, Google has banned MetaMask multiple times. They've removed popular open source applications from their app store. And it seems like censorship is just on the rise, and these companies are constantly removing everything. And sometimes they get re-added back, right? But I think there's this idea of these companies have a direct incentive to, at least for now, fight against adoption of Bitcoin and decentralized internet. If you look at how they make their money, right? Google is all about collecting your data and then targeting you with advertising. That's at like its purest, most simple form. So they have no interest in giving users any kind of privacy whatsoever on their devices. Their entire model is about, capturing that data. And then they've also doubled down, on their app store. You can sideload apps into Android, but you have to go into the developer settings, and it's pretty scary. There's no easy way to install a separate app store on Android right now. And then Apple, Apple has been increasing the amount of revenue that they make from services over the last few years, where I think it's over a quarter of their revenue now comes from services. And another enormous part of the revenue actually comes from a search deal with Google, which most people don't talk about. And so Apple has this strong incentive to extract as much value as possible from their current customers, because that's the only way that Apple grows without selling more devices. And they're kind of running out of people to sell devices to at this point. It's like they can make, maybe they'll make an AR headset or something, continue to expand the market, or like with AirPods or other things like that. But if you start to look at what they've been doing with all the different service plays, and then doubling down on, the App Store, like, for example, with their public battles with Epic Games, the makers of Fortnite, and then others, they really want to just capture a share of all that revenue on iOS. And how can they do that if, developers want to start integrating Bitcoin into all of their different products, right? Into their different applications. And so we look at it as, I think that maybe the only way these companies will come around is if they hold a lot of Bitcoin, maybe in their treasury, right? And then there's a strong incentive over time to change those business models in order to accommodate this whole new internet. I don't think we're there yet. And so I think we'll see over the next couple of years more of these public spats, applications that developers want to launch, but they're not allowed to launch. And that's top of mind for us as we think about what hardware we want to build next.
Yeah. How do you think that this plays into just decentralized internet in general, right? We talked a lot about Bitcoin and kind of some of their hardware and business models, but does that also disincentivize the adoption of the decentralized internet because it essentially kind of cuts off what they deem most valuable?
I think it does. I think One of the things when you're building a decentralized internet is you want people to store their own keys and you want them to run their own infrastructure. Those are like the two big things. And that's when we think about the products that we make, those are the two things that are top of mind. And so none of our devices today are built around the idea of users running their own infrastructure. Everything is cloud-based, right? You're using Apple's cloud services or Google's cloud services, and that's just part of the device. It's like integrated at the operating system level, and it's very hard to opt out without degrading your user experience significantly. So if we want consumers actually running their own nodes, running their own, applications, essentially, we need to provide them with a different type of product than the types of products that are being made by the existing, hardware players. And we need to provide them with, an operating system that is designed to be able to communicate back to like maybe their hosted infrastructure or self-hosted infrastructure. And, I just think that, with especially with Google and Apple, with just the cloud storage element, I think that that's not how you build a decentralized internet. And then there's this practical approach, like on iOS too, with you're not even allowed to run applications in the background on iOS. So like, how do you have a node, or even if it's not a node, like how do you have an application that is, listening for communications with other applications running in the background on iOS, like some kind of smart contract or something, or even a Bitcoin wallet that is able to give you a push notification when a transaction comes in. If you don't have a centralized server, it's actually really hard to do. The Blue Wallet guys actually had to make their own server that you can run yourself if you want, but 99% of people just rely on Blue Wallet's hosted server to be able to serve you with a push notification when a transaction comes in. So it gets like that granular, it's things that you don't expect. It's all these restrictions start to add up. And then you're like, wait a minute, like, how do I actually run these applications on a phone? I can run them on a computer. I can run them on a Raspberry Pi, but how do I run them on a phone?